You've got a file with hundreds of pages in it, medical records, service records, statements, and you're still asking the same question every veteran in this position asks: how could they still deny me? Here's the answer nobody tells you: more paperwork isn't more proof. In the last lesson, we walked through the 4 questions that tell you what you're actually trying to prove before you gather a single document. If you haven't watched that one yet, start there. This lesson builds directly on it. Here's the problem nobody warns you about. Knowing what you're trying to prove doesn't mean the evidence sitting in your file right now actually proves it. A lot of veterans believe the same thing. The thicker the file, the stronger the claim. More records, more pages, more paperwork. That is not how it works. You can have a file 3 inches thick and still not have a single piece of evidence that actually does the job you need it to do. Not because anyone lied, not because anyone did anything wrong, because nobody ever taught them how to look at one piece of evidence and ask a simple question: does this actually count? That's what this lesson is about. Here's what we're covering: 3 lenses: competency, credibility, and weight. What each one means in plain English. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to look at one piece of paper in your file and tell me exactly which of the 3 it's failing, if it's failing any of them at all. One note before we start: every example in this lesson is made up, a composite built to make a point. Not a real claim, not your claim. This lesson teaches you the lens. Lesson 3 starts applying it to a real evidence type, starting with medical evidence. More paperwork isn't more proof. Let's start with the myth: more paperwork equals a stronger claim. Here's why that feels true. If evidence is good, more evidence should be better. Right? Wrong question. The real question was never how much you have. It's whether what you have actually does the job. Think of it this way: you could hand someone 50 photographs of a bridge, and not one of them would tell you whether that bridge can hold the weight of a truck. Volume and proof are not the same thing. That's the trap. Veterans gather volume because volume feels like effort, and effort feels like progress. But nobody is scoring you on effort. They're scoring you on what the record actually establishes. So before you gather one more document, you need a filter. 3 questions. Let's go through them, one at a time. Lens 1: competency. Question 1: competency. Is this source even allowed to speak to this issue? Plain English: not every kind of evidence can prove every kind of fact. A friend, a spouse, a battle buddy, they can tell the VA what they saw, what they heard, what changed in you. That's lay evidence, and it's valuable. But a lay witness cannot diagnose a medical condition. That's not their lane. Here's a composite example. Picture a veteran we'll call Dave. Dave's brother writes a statement that says, "I could tell Dave had a herniated disc." That statement is not competent to establish the diagnosis. Dave's brother isn't a doctor. He didn't run an MRI. What he is competent to say is something like, "Dave used to carry 60-pound sea bags without a problem. Now I've watched him wince just getting out of a chair." That's an observation. That's inside his lane. Here's the trap veterans fall into. They ask a buddy statement to do a doctor's job. And when it can't, because it was never competent to do that job in the first place, they think the evidence failed them. It didn't. It was pointed at the wrong target. That's the part most veterans miss. A buddy statement can prove a lot. It just can't prove a diagnosis. Use it for what it's actually good for: observed symptoms, timeline, behavior change, circumstances, and it can carry real weight. Competency asks one thing: is this the right kind of source for this kind of fact? Now let's talk about the second lens. Lens 2: credibility. Question 2: credibility. Is it internally consistent? Plain English: credibility isn't about whether something is true, it's about whether the record believes it. A statement can be completely true and still read as inconsistent, and inconsistency is what erodes credibility, fair or not. Composite example. Say a veteran describes constant, severe knee pain in a personal statement, but the treatment notes in that same file show him reporting occasional soreness to his doctor 18 months earlier. And there's a 2-year gap with no mention of the knee at all. None of that makes the pain untrue, but it creates a gap the reviewer has to account for. And if it isn't addressed, that gap can quietly work against the claim. Here's the honest fix, and it isn't complicated: consistency over time, and an explanation when there's a real gap. I didn't mention it because I was pushing through it. That's a legitimate explanation, but it needs to be said, and it can't be left for the reader to guess. That sounds small. It isn't. A credible record doesn't mean a perfect record. It means a record that explains itself. Credibility asks one thing: Does the story hang together? Now the third lens, and this is the one most veterans have never even heard of. Lens 3, weight question. 3, weight. Does this evidence actually address the specific fact at issue or something sitting next to it? This is where an old myth lives, and it's worth saying plainly. Having medical records is not the same as having medical evidence. Composite example. A veteran's chart note says, patient reports knee pain, service related per patient. That's a passing mention. The doctor wrote down what the veteran said. The doctor didn't examine the connection, didn't offer an opinion, didn't reason through it. Now compare that to a note where the doctor writes, based on the veteran's documented in-service injury and the current exam findings, this condition is at least as likely as not related to that injury. Same doctor, maybe even the same visit, completely different weight. The first note is genuine. It's real. Nobody's saying it's fake. It just isn't doing the job of connecting the dots. And something can be 100% true and still carry very little weight if it doesn't address the specific fact that's actually at issue. That's the reframe this whole lesson is built on. Truth and proof are not the same thing. Weight asks one thing. Does this evidence hit the actual target or land somewhere next to it? Running all three lenses together. Now let's put all three together, because that's really the skill here. Not memorizing 3 words, running one piece of evidence through all 3 questions in order. Picture one composite piece of evidence, a letter from a veteran's sister describing how his temper changed after he came home. Competency. Is she allowed to speak to this? Yes. She's not diagnosing anything. She's describing an observed behavior change. That's inside her lane. Credibility. Is it consistent? If her account lines up with the rest of the file, other statements, other records, the general timeline, it holds up. If it contradicts something else with no explanation, that's a problem worth addressing. Weight. Does it address the specific fact at issue? If the fact at issue is whether the symptoms are severe enough to affect daily functioning, a sister's specific detailed account can carry real weight. If the fact at issue is a medical diagnosis, that same letter carries almost none, because it was never competent to prove that in the first place. Same letter, 3 different answers, depending on what you're asking it to do. That's the whole lesson in one sentence. The value of a piece of evidence isn't fixed. It depends on what you're pointing it at. Here's your 48-hour challenge, and I want you to do this before tomorrow evening. Pick one single piece of evidence from your file, one document, one statement, one record, just one. Write down 3 short answers next to it. 1. Is the source allowed to speak to this? Yes, no, or not sure. 2. Is it consistent with the rest of your file? Yes, no, or not sure. 3. Does it actually address the specific fact you need it to address, or something next to it? That's it. 1 document, 3 short answers, 15 minutes, tops. You're not fixing anything yet. You're just learning to see it clearly. That's the skill this lesson is teaching. Let's recap. More documents isn't more proof. Connected, competent, credible evidence that actually addresses the fact at issue. That's proof. 3 questions get you there. Competency. Is the source allowed to speak to this? Credibility. Is it consistent? Weight. Does it address the specific fact at issue or something next to it? Truth and proof are not the same thing. Being right isn't the same as being provable, but provable evidence aimed at the right target is what does the work. In the next lesson, we start applying this lens to a real evidence type, medical evidence, and what it actually needs to show to carry the weight you're counting on it to carry. Before the next lesson, download the Evidence Blueprint workbook and score one piece of your own evidence using the 3-part lens inside it. The link is in the description. My goal is never to mislead, only to empower you with accurate, honest, and actionable information. I'll see you in the next lesson. Semper Fidelis, and God bless.